Hi, my name is Tina, and I am a lucky organ transplant recipient. My story starts when I was 13 years old, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I had an uncle, my mother's brother, who also had type 1 diabetes, and I did watch him suffer from one of the worst complications to diabetes, which was diabetic retinopathy, which caused his blindness. This was a very scary thing for me at 13 to consider that that might also be my fate. I also learned that the other complications could be kidney disease and organ failure, neuropathy, always at risk for amputations because of poor circulation and poor feeling in the extremities, and very slow response to infections. Diabetes was a real challenge for me. The first few years were okay. I was learning everything, and my family was learning everything new, and we definitely operated as a team when it came to my care. So much so that my mother changed her career of nursing in emergency medicine to nursing in diabetes management. This gave me lots of tools and lots of information that maybe not everyone would be available to, unless they were, unless they were seen by their doctor. I kind of had this information 24/7 every single day, not just when I went to see my diabetes doctors. I suffered a lot of complications starting in my early to mid-20s. I had been diagnosed with neuropathy in my feet, and that was about maybe when I was 24. And I noticed that when I was working on my feet all day, and I came home one afternoon and found that there was dried blood inside of my white socks, and I didn't remember having hit anything. I didn't remember having any pain, but there was a cut inside my toe, and I never felt the cut. A few years later, I was diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy in both of my eyes, and I had very extensive, very painful laser treatments to cauterize the neovascularizations that were growing abnormally in my eyes. And it was about, I would say, in 2006, many years later, when I was diagnosed with diabetic nephropathy. And I was staged at stage 2 chronic kidney disease. At the time, I was devastated. I was very depressed. I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought that I was going to die. And I didn't know if I wanted to go through dialysis treatments. I knew that would be the next step for me. And I followed the diet. It was very difficult to do. It's the The renal diet is very restrictive, and more so than the diabetes diet, which is kind of a cakewalk compared to the renal diet. I did that for a couple of years, and I did not think that I was receiving as much treatment, as much concentrated treatment with my former team. So I met a couple of people from a different team and a new nephrologist who I really respected and learned many things from. Within a few days of meeting this new nephrologist, I was told that I needed a kidney transplant. I had suspected that my sister would volunteer to be my donor, but it was such a heaviness on me to ask her if she would, and I delayed asking her, and I procrastinated, and I put it off. It broke my heart that I would have to ask her to do something so huge for me. But lo and behold, my big sister, she called me and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to be your donor." So that was huge. And at the time, my sister, my mother, and one of my best friends were all tested to see if they could be my donor, if we matched. And my friend was not a match. And when she got her results, she called me on the phone, and we cried on the phone because I think that she really wanted to help. And I just cried because it was such a beautiful gesture for her to even want to do this. My mother and my sister, however, were both equally matched, 3 out of 6 antigen match for my kidney transplant. And the team decided to go with my sister just because of the age of her kidney would probably be a much better fit for me. And I think my mom was a little bummed because I think she wanted to do it. So there was like this, not competition, but a really nice thing to have so many people wanting to help. At the time that I was diagnosed at stage 2, I'm sorry, I guess it was at stage 4. Stage 4, I believe at stage 4, my kidney function was right around the 20 or 19 mark, my GFR. So I was technically eligible to be put on the UNOS list, and I was simultaneously listed for a kidney and a pancreas, even though I had living donors lined up to donate. I was listed for that just in case factor. And also I would need a pancreas at a later time after my kidney transplant. Pancreas can only come from a deceased donor, so and the kidney transplant from a living donor is typically a much healthier organ than a deceased donor kidney, which sometimes does not work right away. My sister and I, we were admitted into the hospital for our kidney exchange, her kidney transplant surgery, and my sister had a nephrectomy. She had a laparoscopic nephrectomy, and I was in the next OR suite waiting for her kidney to come through. And the next thing I remember was just being in my the recovery room. I stayed in the recovery room for quite a while. They needed to get a room cleaned for me, and it took some time to actually settle down. The following day, I took my first walk around the unit. Of course, I was in some pain. I had a lot of swelling. I had a lot of body swelling, facial swelling, and one of the medications that I was put on for immunosuppression was causing a lot of abdominal pain. But all of these things, all of these reactions to medications that I was going to be on for the rest of my life did settle down after I was home and after my body got a chance to adjust to the new medication. And also when you are in the hospital, kind of are overloaded with immunosuppression until they can figure out the best amount that you need. And it's a balance between not so much that you are susceptible to opportunistic infections, but not so little that you put the graft at risk and lose your brand new organ. So they do tend to give you lots of immunosuppression right in the beginning because you don't want to lose that precious gift. But then they kind of wean you down off of some or most of them until you get to that maintenance level that your team has figured out that you're going to do your best on. I was in the hospital about 5 days, and my sister was only in the hospital about 3 days, and she was discharged. We have done really, really remarkably well. My kidney function is great, and my numbers are great. My sister's feeling great. She feels great physically and emotionally. She has become an advocate for living donors and also for deceased donor families. She really does walk the walk and talk the talk anywhere and any place she can with whoever will listen, whoever's open to learning about organ donation. I myself also am involved in transplant groups and spreading awareness about organ donation, registering to become an organ donor, and I volunteer with several groups who all have the same cause. A year after my kidney transplant with my sister, I received a call one night that there was a pancreas that was a pancreas offer for me. And I learned a little bit about my donor, my potential donor. And I was healthy at the time, not being sick, not having any infections, and in a place where I could accept the offer. And I did. It was around maybe 9 o'clock at night when I received that call. And I believe we got to the hospital somewhere around midnight. we knew it would be a wait several hours before they would give the go-ahead, that the organ was in good shape, and that it was not just viable, but a good organ for me, and that my team was confident in this really amazing gift. That did happen the very following morning, around 8 o'clock in the morning. I guess they were finalizing everything and bringing me in. And at that time, although I had had the kidney transplant, I was still living with diabetes, and I was on an insulin pump. And I remember when they were wheeling me into the operating room, I disabled my insulin pump and handed it over to one of the nurses. And that actually is the very last time that I have ever required insulin. And that will be 8 years ago, and 9 years with my sister's kidney. I think about my donor, my pancreas donor, often, and especially around the anniversary. I know that her family suffered a great loss, and an unexpected one. And my family has her family in our hearts always. I don't know what more I can say about my story, other than it continues. Well, I can tell you this. Lots of things happen as a result of being alive. And my boyfriend, who saw me through my transplant journey, became my husband almost 2 years ago. And that certainly would not have been possible without my sister's life-saving gift to me. And I think she's a fan of him. So it has worked out for everyone. I encourage living donation because it not just helps the recipient, but it also helps everyone else who doesn't have a living donor, who is on that UNOS list, move up one notch at a time. And that's where I will leave it. Thank you. I hope that you are considering donation. I hope that you also consider living donation and how you can become a hero and save someone's life and be part of their story.